Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. We have a lot to talk about in today's video, including some interesting developments on Hailie Deegan's future in NASCAR. An IndyCar executive takes a swipe at NASCAR, Kyle Petty's rant on blocking and why it's a really bad hot take, NASCAR's response to fans and media questioning the sanctioning body on its overtime ruling at Nashville in favor of Kyle Busch regaining his lost positions, and finally, we have our latest By the Numbers segment, which features a breakdown of Busch's last two seasons, of which the contrast is striking and not in a good way. And I'll wrap everything up with a discussion on what has to be the most surprising lineup of top 10 drivers and our last 5 races analysis this season. Let's start with the news that came out on Monday about Xfinity Series rookie Hailie Deegan being replaced in the number 15 AM racing car by two-time Cup Series champion Joey Logano for the upcoming Xfinity Chicago Street Race on July 6th. Team President Wade Moore said the following in a statement: "The level of competition in the Xfinity Series is as competitive as it's ever been. It is our goal at AM Racing to field a competitive race team through our technical alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing and provide any of our drivers the best equipment and opportunity to be successful on track each weekend. With that being said, we haven't had the success on track that we were hoping for in the first half of the season. When the opportunity to have Joey in the car at Chicago became a possibility, we felt we needed to take advantage of the knowledge and feedback that a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion could provide to our team's growth. We intend to take the feedback and data from the Chicago race weekend and apply it to building better race cars each week so AM Racing can have a stronger second half of the season." There is no denying Hailie Deegan has had a rough first half of the 2024 campaign. Through 17 races, the number 15 pilot has 4 top 20 finishes, her best a 12th at Talladega. On the other end, the 22-year-old has recorded 11 results of 25th or worse. She's 27th in the points and has the lowest total of any driver who has started all races. She has an average finishing position of 26.8. These numbers are in even starker contrast when you look at how Brett Moffitt performed in the same ride in 2023. Through 17 races, the 2018 Truck Series champ had posted 5 top 10s, including a 4th place finish on the same Chicago street course where Deegan is being replaced. For the season, Moffitt scored 9 top 10s and had an average finishing position of 17.9. Interestingly, the AM Racing statement provided no indication as to whether this is a one-race deal or if it might even be permanent. But there's likely a financial component to the decision, and it's related to the upcoming race through the streets of the Windy City. There are 43 cars entered in the race around the 2.2-mile circuit that will feature 38 entries. The team wants to ensure that it qualifies for the event, and Lagano, who finished 8th in the inaugural Cup race in 2023, provides a much higher chance when compared to the rookie, who has started 35th at COTA, 38th at Portland, and 37th at Sonoma. If Lagano runs well and shows the number 15 car is better than Deegan has displayed through the first half of the season, it could be a tough decision for the team, but as they've proven with their most recent action, they're not afraid of making those decisions. Moving on to our next story, and it's coming from IndyCar's chief executive, Mark Miles, who visited with Black Book Motorsport about the series' plans to evolve as it progresses into a new era. During that interview, the main topic of conversation was about the series working with Fox starting in 2025. Miles was asked about the cord-cutting culture in the U.S. and if there was an argument that while the visibility of races will improve, it will become harder to follow IndyCar overall. His response took a swipe at NASCAR and something many of its fans agree with. Exactly how you choose to get it and exactly what the expense may be varies based on the choices you make, but it is available. In terms of ultimately what the costs are, time will tell. Respectfully, you could look at another major motorsport series in this country and observe that to watch the entire schedule of races, you will need Fox, FS1, FS2, Amazon Prime Video, TNT, NBC, USA Network, and Peacock. That's before you get to the CW for the Xfinity Series. Shots fired. He's got a point, as fans have said on social media, but as they say, money talks. And NASCAR got a lot of it in its latest television deal. Our next story is one about Kyle Petty and what he had to say this week after watching the Nashville race. But I must preface all of what I'm about to say by saying this. I see Petty as NASCAR's resident flamethrower. He offers a lot of hot takes, and many of them are just outrageous, like calling out Ryan Blaney last year for being potential unfulfilled early in the year before he went off and won the championship. His latest hot take, which is full of hot air as far as I'm concerned, is what has been a hot topic in 2024, air or aero blocking. Petty went off on a rant this week on NASCAR's YouTube channel about several things, but had the harshest criticism for air blocking.
We had some fantastic racing between Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain for the last 10 or 15 laps of the race. Block, 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 block. I don't consider blocking racing, but that's what was going on. When is racing going to come back into the sport? And blocking be a penalty? It has to be a penalty to take a guy's line away and intentionally block.
A penalty? Really, Kyle? Here's what Elton Sawyer said about it earlier this year when it was a debated subject after Denny Hamlin did it to Kyle Larson in the closing laps at Dover.
I think, 20 years ago, I can remember hearing the word, I'm aerotight. So I think it's just, it's just a terminology that, I think the garage uses today. I don't think this has anything to do with our current car. And
here's what Kevin Harvick said about it in April of 2015 after finishing second at Texas. Like the 22 Lagano, you knock them out of the way, Harvick said after finishing second to Jimmy Johnson. That's the chance you take when you block. He blocked and I knocked him out of the way. To which Lagano responded saying he was trying to win the race. It's the end of the race. I blocked him and he got into me. I get it. Early in the race, that's not acceptable. End of the race, we're racing for the win. I do the same thing. Remember, that was 2015. In other words, this has been around for a long time, so it's not going away anytime soon, and it's certainly not worthy of a penalty. And our last news item is NASCAR's response to its decision on Sunday to return Kyle Busch from near the back of the field to the second row after he was involved in an incident that started with Kyle Larson getting into Ross Chastain, which sent the Trackhouse racing car spinning up the track into the wall, right into the number 8's path. The two-time champion, to his credit, avoided running into the number 1 car by slamming on the brakes, but he did run into the wall and dropped more than 20 positions. In Monday's video, I talked about how Jeff Burton called NASCAR's decision crazy and ridiculous. Yesterday, NASCAR Cup Series director Brad Moran addressed the situation on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.
His spots weren't taken away because our rule clearly states that you must maintain a reasonable speed, and reasonable speed is for what track conditions at the time. And Kyle, actually, we don't want to encourage drivers to stay on the gas and just kind of bang their way through. What he did was he avoided the incident. We deemed him not involved in that incident. He didn't stop. If he had stopped, he probably would have ended up towards the back of the field. But he was scored in the 4th place position when that caution come out, and he didn't get into the 1 or the 5 and made very slight contact with the wall. So we would deem that as not being involved in that incident, and that's why he was able to restart where he was scored.
Does that go to the scoring loop, or is that sort of a view from the tower, Brad, in that call?
No, that was right off the scoring loop. It was loop number 4, and that's what was the last loop that the leaders were scored on. And so really it comes down to, do we determine him being involved in that wreck? And we did not determine him being involved in the wreck. We determined that he avoided being involved in the wreck.
I could ramble on about why I think this is a bad response, and the initial decision still doesn't make any sense. But all I have to say is simply this. He said Busch wasn't involved in the incident on 5 separate occasions in that just over a minute-long answer. It's almost like he was trying to convince everyone, including himself, that this was the truth, because according to NASCAR's own stat sheet, it's not. Take a look at this. As you can see, Busch, or the number 8, is officially listed as being involved in the incident along with the rest of the cars that were involved. Just another shake your head kind of moment with the sanctioning body contradicting itself yet again. Now, let's move on to our By the Number segment, but stick with Kyle Busch, and it's inspired by what he had to say to me a couple of weeks ago at New Hampshire. Take a listen.
Yeah, we haven't excelled the way that we need to. We haven't been able to get some finishes that we feel like we're in a position to score a lot better. So just got to keep fighting the best fight.
he talked about not getting the finishes they deserved. He had finished 35th at both Gateway and Iowa in 2 of the 3 previous races. After those remarks, he finished 35th again at the Magic Mile, then followed it up with a 27th place finish this weekend at Nashville. So focusing on those finishes, let's take a look at Busch in 2023 versus 2024 through the first 19 races. As you can see in every statistical category, including wins, top 5s, top 10s, top 20s, and poles, the 39-year-old's numbers are worse than they were in 2023. The only mark where his numbers are higher is in DNFs, where he has 4 in 2024 compared to 3 in 2023. While the graph definitely shows that Busch is not performing as well in 2024, I think the most eye-popping stat on this whole thing is average finishing position. Look at that. He's finishing 8 spots worse compared to last year. As he mentioned, he's not getting the finishes that he deserves in some of those races. But all drivers could say the same thing. That's just part of racing. But there's no denying that Busch is off in 2024. And to wrap up, let's take a look at our last 5 races analysis. It's been a couple weeks since I did the last one, and a lot has changed. In our analysis a few weeks ago after Sonoma, Brad Keselowski claimed the top spot with an impressive average finishing position of 6.0 and was followed by Christopher Bell at 7.2, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, and Ross Chastain. This week, Elliott is the only one remaining in the top 5 at 3rd, even after back-to-back finishes of 18th at New Hampshire and Nashville. Tyler Reddick, who was on the heels of Elliott when I first started doing the 5-race analysis a couple of months ago, is now at the top with an average finishing position of 8.6, and is followed by Chris Buescher at 9.0. Elliott and then 2 drivers, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell, are tied at 11.4. Rounding out the top 10 are some new names, including Todd Gilliland coming in at 8th at 13.4 and Carson Hocevar in 10th at 14.4. A couple of other drivers I wanted to highlight include Denny Hamlin, who is coming in at 20th, appropriately enough with an average finish of 20.0, after what has been a rough stretch over the last 4 weeks starting at Sonoma, but Hamlin is still better than 2 of his JGR teammates in Truex and Ty Gibbs. Truex was consistently inside the top 5 on our first month of last 5 races analysis, but has dropped off in a big way lately with 3 finishes of 24th or worse. Interestingly, Gibbs is 1 position worse, 22.4. And the last one we'll talk about is coming in at second from last, and it's no surprise based on what we just discussed. Kyle Busch has an average finishing position of 28.8. Look at those last 5 races. Ouch. I guess on a positive note for fans of Rowdy, there's only one way to go from here, and that's up. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. I want to get your thoughts. First, what do you think about the news on Hailie Deegan? Is this the end of the road for the Xfinity Series rookie? If I'm a Degan fan, I didn't find the AM Racing statement encouraging, simply because there was no mention of her returning to the car. It'll be interesting to see what happens after Chicago. Also, you know what I think of Kyle Petty's comments on blocking. Do you agree or disagree with what he had to say? And what did you think about NASCAR's response to why it repositioned Kyle Busch in the second row at the end of the race in Nashville? Lastly, I want your thoughts on the Kyle Busch comparison between last year and this year, and what you thought of our last 5 races analysis. Any surprises in there for you? Remember, if you want to read my written work, go check it out at heavy.com. Also go to beatenandbanging.com if you want to sign up for my weekly newsletter, and you'll receive an email each Friday recapping the top stories from the week, including reviews of the various NASCAR-related podcasts. Also, make sure to check out my Beating and Banging podcast on the Blue Wire Network. Thank you as always for supporting the channel, and have a great rest of your day.